Hi, it's harvest day, everyone. So this is so exciting for us. And while we were harvesting, we actually realized that we have never given a whole tour of our farm. And we're gonna do that on a whole video. But today we actually want to show you our market garden. This is the garden where we are growing our vegetables to actually sell. So let's get into it. Okay, so first up is our zucchini, what they call baby marrow. But there's nothing baby about these marrow. As you can see, some of them are extremely large. Now, a big challenge that we're having with our marrow is that they grow extremely staggered, right? So these are very different sizes, and it's very difficult then to have a whole punnet. One is extremely big, one is much smaller. They're growing at very different rates. It makes it just challenging to put a batch together. Now, the next thing that we were actually struggling with is diseases. Now, if you look here, this is a plant that was actually being targeted by aphids. Aphids underneath here, making the whole leaves curly. And then this one is healthy and looking just fine. And unfortunately for us, we were not on top of the aphid situation. So going forward, it's something that we actually have to plan and do going forward. All right, so another big issue we actually had was worms. Now, these worms would go in and burrow into, the fruit and then completely destroy it. I mean, we've lost just so many of our marrow because of this whole issue. But despite the fact that we struggled a bit with, these marrow this time, it's a very big improvement. We noticed this because at first we grew our marrow inside of our shed. And once we put it here, we saw very big differences. One of them is that, space. They have a lot more space here. It was very difficult to grow them inside of our shed in the first place because they required a lot of space and the trellising was very difficult. The plant is very flimsy, to be honest. So after a while, it just starts falling over. And it was a bit of a nightmare in that small space. Now, the next thing was powdery mildew. Powdery mildew was such a big problem for us because it would infect all of the leaves and it would move on to the next plant. So here we haven't had a lot of issues with powdery mildew, as you can see, but it's also probably because of the space and there's a lot of air that's also moving in between. So that's not really a problem as well. And then the last one for us was a very big one. We didn't get a lot of yields in there because there was not a lot of pollination going on. The bees were not able to get there and other pollinators as well. But once we put it out here, we started to see a lot of bees and a lot of pollinators moving around here, and the yields are just a lot more. Just look at the fruit that we're actually getting. So this is our zucchini. It's looking relatively okay. So on to our tomatoes. Okay, so now we come to our tomatoes, and these are cherry tomatoes. We love tomatoes in our home, so this was just an easy decision for us. But also on top of that, tomatoes are really appreciated around in this area. They grow well. They are absolutely loved for their salads. They are well priced. So this is just great to really have. Now, if you look at our tomatoes, they're growing so well, but they are very poorly trellised, right? That's because we didn't design our trellis very well. It is just falling apart. We just use sticks and wire, and we just should have used a much more strong trellis. But despite that, they are looking very healthy. They're also very standardized as well. So we're probably going to get, good punnets from there because they're going to be around the same size and they're going to ripen at around the same place. Now, when it comes to challenges, we did have a bunch. And the first one we had was our seedlings. When we planted them, we had cutworms all across this area. Now we would wake up in the morning and then a whole plant would have disappeared. So we actually were struggling and panicking quite a bit. But after a while, that situation kind of died down, and most of the plants, as you can see, are still alive and they're doing very well. The other thing as well is weeds. It is so hard to get rid of these weeds. We have this very, very strong perennial grass. It just has very strong roots and very deep roots as well. So you actually have to dig it out, and it runs all across the ground. It is just a very difficult grass to get rid of. So every time we remove it and then it rains, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So we're thinking over the long term, we probably want to put a weed suppressor mat or something like that to maybe just get rid of it. And then the other thing that we also have had challenges with is suckers, right? So if you don't know, suckers grow in between the main part of the plant. And we should have been removing these sucker portions, right? And this is why this tree is just so big and it's just falling apart, right? We should have been on top of these suckers, but we would just remove them, and then the following day there'll just be more and more and more, and we just were never on top of it. So, you know, going forward, it's something we definitely have to be on top of. We want to make sure we're pruning them, we're maintaining them, and our plants are doing just well. Yeah, so on to the next one. That is our cucumbers. So these are the 2 rows of cucumbers that we've actually planted, right? And as you can see, the trellis is not a problem here. It is just much more firm. It's holding up much better than the tomatoes one. But the problem here is the actual plants themselves. They are not growing at all. They're not doing very well. As you can see, they're not growing much higher than this, and they are, you know, a couple of weeks old. So they definitely look stunted, and they started producing at a very, very small age. So this definitely told us that there was something wrong. We think it could have been a nutrition thing, or just the plants were stunted themselves. So these actually have given us a very, very big challenge. On top of that, my mortal enemy, the aphids, were actually attacking them. So this was also a very, very big loss for us. So this we probably will have to scrap. And like, if you look at the cucumber, it looks really developed, you know, and you might think, well, you know, it looks very healthy and so on, but you know, if you actually eat it, it doesn't, yeah, it just doesn't taste fresh. It's not crunchy, it's very watery. It's a very watery, you know, kind of cucumber. So it's not something that we are very comfortable to actually sell. So unfortunately, we're just gonna write this off as a loss. But, you know, we're definitely learning along the way. We should have just planted our seedlings a lot sooner. We should have also made sure that, you know, we're just monitoring them and also feeding them a bit better. So on to our next one. Okay, so over here we have our peppers, and these are green peppers. And we're very excited about the peppers because they look like they're doing quite well. One concern we have is the size differences, right? Again, we really have to make sure that we get a punnet, because, you know, we have to be able to sell. We can't really have like 1 pepper or 2 just growing very different times as well. So here we have a big, you know, pepper tree, and then this one is quite small. And this is really the main concern that we're having. Let me show you, for example, how some of the trees are actually performing, right? Like the one at the very end here is already producing 2 peppers. It's looking really like, you know, it's just a few weeks away from just producing, you know, healthy peppers. And then the next one here really doesn't have any peppers coming out whatsoever. So that is our main concern regarding, you know, being able to get enough to do a punnet. Now, the good thing about the peppers as well is that we really didn't pay a lot of attention to them, but they grew really well. And they also did not get attacked by any cutworms when we planted them here. So they look like they're really resistant to that as well. Now, you know, one thing to note here is that we only have 20 of them. So it's not a lot of peppers that we planted here. We weren't really planning to sell a lot of peppers. It's more trying to see how they will perform. If they do very well, we can actually raise the numbers. So let's go to our spinach to see how that one is going. Okay, so here we have our spinach, right? And it is under this shade, right? Which we actually built ourselves. Now, the reason why we actually built this shed was because these spinach were just being burnt alive. There was just too much sun here. And once we actually put the shed on, these spinach actually bounced back, which was really amazing. And once they bounced back, we now have a new problem. And that is they're being eaten alive by something else. So it's a bunch of worms or insects that are really just going into this plant. So we're looking to, you know, introduce some sprayings of, you know, garlic, or possibly some companion planting to really, you know, sort out this issue. And the reason is because spinach is so prized in this area. A lot of people want spinach, but it's really hard to find. So if we can produce a lot of good quality spinach, we can actually sell it very well. Now, I want to show you something, right? These are marrows, and I know I showed you a bunch of baby marrows before, but these are the other batches that we planted a bit later. Now, this was from the same seedlings that we actually had from the other side, and we actually left them, you know, to just sit for over a week or 2, and we thought that they would not grow very well, but look at them. They're actually bigger and healthier looking than the ones on the other side. And the other interesting thing is that this soil is much less nutritious. It's got a lot of stones and rock, and we didn't think it would do very well. The soil in itself was relatively dry, so we also thought it would not perform very well. But they're growing and they look like they're doing well, right? So this is another interesting thing about plants, right? They really do surprise you, and sometimes they do things that you didn't think they would do. So now to our lettuce. All right, so here we have our lettuce, right? So we were very excited to actually include lettuce here because lettuce is another great complement of the market garden. It grows very well here in this area. People really love it, and we were very excited to just have it here. But unfortunately, as you can see, it is not doing very well. We've grown it in these bags, and the reason is because when we bought these seedlings, we didn't really have space to actually plant them out into the ground. Now, I know it looks a bit confusing to say, well, it looks like we do have a bunch of space here. But the thing is that this area, when it rains, it holds a lot of moisture. So we actually have to build a bunch of beds off of the ground to really protect these plants. And at this time, we hadn't really built any raised beds. So we put them in here and we thought that they would grow very well, but they didn't. So not only did we possibly stunt them, but we also, planted them and we possibly didn't take very good care of them. So this is another big loss for us. So it looks like for now, our market garden will be spinach. Hopefully it will be, zucchini. It will be tomatoes. It might be some peppers, no cucumbers for us, and no, lettuce for us right now. But, hopefully that's okay. So I'll take you into our shed, which is where we usually do a bit of experimenting. We'll try a few things to see what is really going on. And, very excited to show you what we're doing there. So let's go. All right, so this is our green shed. And in here, we're experimenting with, beetroot. We're experimenting with lettuces and a new variety of red cabbage. We want to see how well these will grow. And if they do very well, then they will be promoted to our market garden. That is where we are going to grow them and then sell them for people to actually buy. So right now, this is really it, right? We're very excited about this whole process. We want to see how our market garden is going to go. It's really in its infancy, young stages, but we're really excited to grow it out and actually make it much bigger. We'd like to also show you a whole, tour of our whole farm soon, hopefully. We're very excited about that as well. But so far, this is really what's happening right now. So let us know. What are the things that we're doing wrong? Are there things that you think we're doing right? Are there any tips? Is there anything you can possibly tell us? But, thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and then we'll see you again next time.